Today in the Nerdy Gritty, what is ComicsGate's and how do we feel about it?
One more world disappears inside it. Just another hopeless addict. Well, they make some man instead. If the drums don't get you, the guitars will.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Nerdy Gritty, where we delve deep into the details of pop culture. I am Fox.
I am Captain Dez.
You're Captain Dez.
Yeah, having chosen that name after my parents were brutally murdered in a horrific accident.
Right.
It couldn't have been an accidental murder. That's not what murder.
No, that's what
I don't
it
know.
is.
Comics backstories are
murder.
weird.
Yeah.
Are real weird. Hey, Fox, you know the old Ryan Reynolds, don't you?
Yes, we are very good friends.
Yeah, you guys go way back from the time that you both guest starred on that episode of Scrubs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I was in X-Men Origins Wolverine. Well, I wasn't in it. I was at the world premiere. That's not a joke. I was at the world premiere of it because it premiered.
I'm so sorry.
Premiered at a theater, at a Harkins Theater in Arizona, where I worked. I didn't work at this theater, but they had me go over. And I did see him from about 60 feet away, so we're very good friends.
Right.
He and I, it's a 50-50 split on Aviator Gin. So.
Fox and Ryan Reynolds don't know each other at all, just so you guys know. Just to be clear.
How dare you, sir?
Hey, have you heard about Group Effort Initiative?
Group Effort Initiative? No.
Ryan Reynolds has launched the Group Effort Initiative, in which he is, from the beginning, he has put this out to anybody who wants to help me, you can.
Okay.
He's offering his own money to pay between 10 and 20 people of color, minorities, indigenous peoples, whatever else, to give them acting training and put them in his projects. And his goal is to start an entire kind of organization that their specific goal is to look for minorities.
Okay, so like a talent agency, essentially?
Yeah, essentially, and put them in film and also training them and bringing them up for underrepresented people groups. Okay. And here we are with, like, we've been talking about this forever, and somebody's kind of finally stepping up to do this. And I thought that was really cool.
Sure. That's nice.
Yeah. That's it, man.
That's all you got? You just wanted to get that out there? Oh, okay. Well, that's
what we do on our opening topics.
You know what I love?
That is a good thing.
Ryan Reynolds basically has found the character that he can and will be till the day he dies.
Right.
Deadpool, and they will always be popular because they are funny and well-made movies, so far at least. And now that he's going to be involved in the Disney machine with that character, like, he's good, you know? Like, he's good. Like, he could still be quote-unquote canceled if he made some kind of controversial statement. Right. But anyway, so I think, like, what I'm saying is he gets to do what he wants now. It's like, want to make a gin company? Sure, I'll do that. Yeah, cool. Well, you know what? I got money and we'll always have money.
I think there's coffee, too.
Maybe. Yeah, sure. Yeah, he goofs on
Mint
Hugh
Mobile
Jackman all the time.
Mint Mobile is something else. He's like a mobile phone person now.
Is that his, or is he just, like, advertise for them?
I think, he said my mobile phone network, so I assume.
Okay,
I don't
sure.
know, maybe.
Here's the thing. Yeah, so I think he just gets to do what he wants.
I'm really interested to see how many other people are willing to, like, because he's openly said this is 100% self-funded as of now. I wonder how many other people are going to step up and help him, because there are a lot of tweets from Taika Waititi and what's his name, Wolverine, Hugh Jackman,
the huge Ackman.
All kinds of people are out there saying that's awesome, man. Good job.
Great. Thanks.
What's going on in the news world there, Fox? What else is going on?
Speaking of John Wick, well, actually, the delay of John Wick 4, which is now not going to come out until 2022, I think, like a lot of movies have been delayed, I think has actually had a positive influence on the series, because now John Wick 4 and 5 will shoot back to back.
Oh,
I'm so excited.
How many John Wick movies are they making?
I hope a lot.
Okay.
It's a weird series because I feel like they've kind of gotten a little worse with each one,
yes.
But also I think they've gotten cooler in each one. I think they've improved.
This is the you that loves Fast and the Furious that's talking right now.
No, I think what I think it is that the actual plot has gotten more complicated, which a big part of the first one was that it's very simple.
Yes.
Real easy to understand, revenge, whatever. And I don't think the plots have gotten a little more complicated, but the world has expanded.
Yes.
And that's also one of the best parts of these movies. And so to me, that's been the improvement with each one, is that now I get to see more of this world and kind of get more of this flavor that they're adding to it every time.
Well, Fox, something has happened in the world of Nintendo, something called the Gigaleak.
The Gigaleak.
Nintendo Gigaleak is, quote, I'm reading from a CBR.com article here.
Resources.com.
Yep. It is, quote, a massive amount of files, including source code, cut designs, and more information that was never meant to see publicly, has been released for all to see on the internet.
Yeah.
So this is really cool. This is stuff that happens sometimes where people will dig into the source code of video games and find different things. That happens all the time.
Easter eggs and stuff.
Here's the problem. Nintendo very, very vehemently protects their IP.
Yep. That's classic Nintendo.
And this is like this is objectively illegal.
Yeah,
what has happened
illegally obtained information.
So it's kind of raising this ethical question right now. Like, are we okay with this? Are we as gamers, like, we get to see the evolution of Luigi and some Star Fox stills. Is that worth illegally procuring stuff?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it is illegal. So, and it's just theft of property, like digital property, but still property.
Right.
So no, that's not okay.
It's
and
not
also to me, I don't care about this crap. So.
Hey, Luigi could have been a playable character in Mario 64. They found his whole, like, what he looks like in Mario 64 world. That's so important.
He looks like Mario, but taller and green.
And an L on his hat.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Man, I think what the biggest problem is with this kind of stuff is that it often leads to people saying, well, we could have had this, so now this is worse. Super Mario 64 could have had Luigi? Oh, well, then we got robbed. No, you didn't. Super Mario 64 is one of the greatest games ever made. Like, who cares? Like, I don't know. Deleted scenes and stuff like that not being in movies, like, takes away from the movie somehow. So,
as a preacher, one of the ways that I have helped people understand, like, human nature and kind of, like, human greed in some ways is I will do a thing where I have 3, like, unopened gifts, and I ask for 3 volunteers, and those 3 volunteers come up on stage, and then I have them one at a time pick a gift, and then they all open them. And one of them is like $50 gift card or whatever, and the next one is like a $10 gift card, and the last one is a penny. And then everybody goes and sits down, and I said, and here's the funny thing about humans, though. That person who got the $50 gift card is super happy.
Just pumped.
The person who got the $10 gift card they're okay.
Right,
you know?
right.
The person who got a penny is a little bit disappointed.
Yeah.
When really everybody has gained in this.
Right.
Everybody in the crowd is a little disappointed that they didn't get this.
They didn't get anything.
But they are exactly the same that they were a little bit ago. Like, only one person is 100% satisfied in this situation, and yet nobody has changed except for gaining stuff. And that's kind of the problem, I think, with Gigaleak, is that we feel that we deserve this. We earn this. You know, there's this mindset among gamers that because I am part of this, I need this now. Anyway, that's what I got for news.
Hey, I watched Legally Blonde this week.
So let's get into what I've done this week. And
hey, man, look, Legally Blonde. So it's one of my wife loves that movie.
Was this you checking down like the law list after watching my
not on that list.
Okay,
not on that list at all.
Gasp.
Even with my cursory knowledge of like going to law school based on what my wife has done. Even I was just like, that's not how it works, right? That's not going to happen, right? No, that's not it. Like, she gets a 179 on the LSAT. That's out of 180. You know, that is look, I'm not trying to discredit, like, at the end of the day, maybe she's smart.
Okay,
she's good at what she does.
Right.
But also, that is like, you are IQ 250 genius level, like, insane, unrealistic, not impossible. That's not even to say. What I want to say about this movie is
you enjoyed it.
I mean, yes. It's not like, it's a fine movie. It's incredibly predictable. You know you know what the movie is at the very start.
Right.
I do appreciate Elle is the main character. 11 from Stranger
Yes,
Things.
there
She's
you go.
actually in the movie.
Yep.
I forget her last name. Elle, whatever. What was most interesting about the movie, though, is that it was such a fascinating mix of things that people want to happen in movies today, like women supporting women, like representation of women in, like, you know,
Positions of power.
not STEM fields, but like, yeah, positions of power, and also like the legal, you know, things where they're not stereotypically associated with.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there was a lot of stuff that would not fly today. Gay stereotypes, the R word is used, the word spastic is used in there, and just a lot of things like that. It's just such a weird mix of it was such, like, if we ever have the discussion again about, like, how do we deal with old media or older media that doesn't conform to standards,
Right.
we should talk about this movie because it's both.
I have watched so many things. My wife was out of town for a week.
Yeah.
And my son would go to bed at 7:30, and I either played Code Vein or just watched movies. I watched, and I kind of want to talk about all of them, but
Pick your faves.
nope, too late.
Okay.
Dragonball Super Broly.
Oh, okay.
I used to be a huge Dragon Ball Z fan.
Yeah.
And this was on Amazon Prime, and I'm like, I'm gonna watch this. And I'll say two things. Number one, Dragon Ball Z is exactly the same as it has always been.
Well, this is Super, but
Dragon Ball is exactly the same as it has always been.
Super is beloved.
Right.
People love Super.
It's wonderful. It's great.
It's also coming back. Like,
But
there's another season or whatever.
It is still Z, and it is still GT, and GT is still Z, and Z is still original Dragon Ball. Like, it's still the same thing. What I will say about Super, though, with this movie in particular, was the animation and a lot of the cinematography is very different, and it was super cool.
They stepped up their game,
and I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
Then I watched both Justice League Dark and Justice League Dark Apocalypse.
Ooh.
Yes, and I'll get into this. Anyway, very good. I enjoyed them both a lot. DC's animated stuff is top notch. Here's what hit me, though. I think that DC's animated movie Flashpoint, I think a lot of the movies after that, like the Teen Titans movies and some of the regular Justice League movies, are all supposed to be one storyline, Marvel movie-esque.
I think I've seen something to that nature.
And I think Justice League Dark Apocalypse is the last one in that. Because they kind of resolve some things that I'm like, wait, what? What is going on here?
I would assume that this takes place on Apocalypse, like the dark
part
side.
of it, some of it,
okay.
the whole thing. It's very good, and the exploration of characters and motivations and things like that are really good. Cowardice and whatnot. They're very good movies. I really enjoyed them.
XFactor, new mutant. So there's the whole Dawn of X.
XFactor, the American Idol spinoff.
Yeah, well, the British, the European. Anyway, XFactor #1, the mutant comic series.
Yep.
All within the context of Dawn of X, which is on Krakoa and all that.
Right.
It's basically for some context here, Krakoa, basically all mutants are quote unquote immortal.
Right.
Because they have a system where they can basically rebirth any mutant that dies.
Of course.
They back up their DNA like a weekly basis, and it means they're in the process of bringing back the 18 million mutants that were killed in House of M.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like they're wanting to bring them all back. And so there's like I loved XFactor because it got down into some specific, like, wait, how do you do that? How do you choose who's first? All that kind of stuff. Who comes now? Like, and then so it talks about like the idea of like people petitioning the people in charge of this. Like, I need, my brother was a mutant, he died, or whatever.
Right.
I don't know. It doesn't talk very specifically, but it does get into it a little bit. XFactor is investigating when a mutant dies, and there's like mysterious circumstances around it. So it's not a cop procedural, but it is basically a detective team.
Yeah.
Going and figuring out what happened to a mutant.
I watched on Netflix. They have Batman: Mask of the Phantasm.
Oh yeah,
the old animated movie.
Yeah, the animated series movie, right?
Yeah,
Like,
animated series movie.
yeah,
Holy crap, it's still incredible.
yeah. That show is timeless.
It really is. I have the entire series of
Yeah.
it, and that movie is so good. It balances again the line of moral neutrality. It balances the what Batman's meant to be, like how far is too far in so many different ways. The noir of it, the mystery of it is still so good as they slowly reveal it to you, but you could have solved it from the very beginning as well. Like they give you the information and then they make the big reveal at the end, and it's still so good. And Joker's character in it is just phenomenal. Classic, like peak Mark Hamill Joker.
Sure.
I cannot say how much I love this movie. Animal Crackers, a movie. It's like a small time animated movie starring Emily Blunt and John Krasinski.
Oh, both of them.
Yeah, about
Is it made by them or are they just hired?
I think they were part of the production
Gotcha.
team. Yeah. It was a super cute story about a kid who was raised in a circus and then met a girl and fell in love with her and decided to go work for her dad instead of continue the circus. And so the circus starts dying, and then they have to go to him and be like, hey, there's a magic to the circus, and without you there, like, we need you. And it's these animal crackers. They're magical. I won't get into it because
Okay.
no spoilers, but
spoilies.
super cute. To me, it was classic 90s animated comedy where it wasn't super serious. There wasn't a lot of like really big lessons to learn from this, but it was still really well made, hilarious, so much fun. All right, we've talked a long time.
We have.
Let's get down to that nerdy gritty.
Agreed.
Hey, before we do this, we want to let you guys know that what you're hearing right now is an ad, sort of, but you're hearing it because you're listening to an edited version of our podcast. If you go to patreon.com/dezandfox, you can have access to our director's cut version of the Nerdy Gritty, as well as a lot of other things if you become a patron, a second tier for the director's cut. In each of the tiers, there are different benefits, obvious things like that. But as a podcast that we try and have guests and we try and have good equipment and things like that, obviously it takes some finances. And so your support really means the world to us. So if you are able, patreon.com/dezandfox, you can go and support us on a monthly basis for as little as $1 right now. I think is our first tier, as little as $1 a month. We would really, really appreciate that. For the second tier, you get the director's cut, but from the first tier, you get access to our Discord. You get access to all of our Patreon exclusive content, including an entire playlist of our Let's Play of a playlist called The Bargain Bin, in which Fox and I just found some real cheap video games online and played 20 minutes of them and just riffed on it and had a great time. It was a lot of fun. Hoping to do that a lot later, as well as a timed exclusive, like for a while. My playthrough of Evan's Remains is going to be exclusive to Patreon for a while. So we would really, really love your supports. But if you're not able to support us, we also really appreciate it when you can go out, tell people about it, spread the word, share our podcasts online. If there's a particular podcast that you thought was really great, tell your friends about it, put it on social media. We really, really appreciate your support. Thank you again, guys. You're all awesome. And let's truly get down to that nerdy gritty.
So last week, we briefly mentioned an event that happened on Twitter in which a author at DC essentially condemned
An artist.
that drew a cover for an upcoming series,
Right.
calling him a member of something called ComicsGate. That whole event, I don't think we need to get into anymore.
Right.
It was a big thing. But for me, when I saw this on Twitter, I saw somebody retweet it, I think, and I was like, what the crap is ComicsGate? I had no idea what this was. Looking into it, first of all, it's been a couple of years since it really
Has it
started.
been that long?
It's been a couple of years. So, but it's obviously been given a lot more attention with this tweet that took place. It was Tom King, he's writing an upcoming series called Rorschach. He has written for Batman. Like, he's a pretty big name at DC Comics. And so there's a lot more spotlight being put on this thing called ComicsGate.
Right.
So what we want to do today is, first of all, talk about what it is, and then kind of just go through what this it's you can't call it an organization. It's just a title people give themselves, or just something that it's an idea basically that people pursue or support or don't support, whatever. We'll talk about basically what the tenets of ComicsGate are, and just kind of talk about them. Give our thoughts. Talk about, do they have a good point or not? Because it's pretty debatable.
Fox brought this up to me, and I thought this was a very, very smart thing to do. Is we're not going to talk about some of the things that people who claim ComicsGate or are part of ComicsGate have said, because they've said some objectively bad things.
Right.
We're going to talk about the actual tenants, like what I guess on their official
We're going to be using
page.
the ComicsGate wiki, which is on Fandom. It's a Fandom wiki.
Right.
On here, there is a page called "What is ComicsGate," and it has a platform section where it just goes through 5 major points that they are against or for or whatever.
Right.
And we'll just go through those. But before we do that, I'm gonna read this right here, because I'm gonna give it as much of an objective description as I can. ComicsGate, or #ComicsGate. Again, this is on the ComicsGate Fandom wiki. Is an online movement that believes the comic book industry, especially publishers Marvel and DC, is oversaturated by political messaging that appeals explicitly to only one demographic that is not interested in the medium, to the detriment of the you got to stick with me here, Des.
Yep. I'm all ready.
To the detriment of the existing consumer base and the industry as a whole. It also addresses a lack of professionalism, inclusivity, objectivity, and accountability of the publishers and their employees, i.e. management, editors, writers, artists, when dealing directly with the customers. So that's the description of what they basically are about. They believe that the comics industry is going in a certain direction that is not good, to say the least.
Yep.
So let's just get right into this. I'm going to give us the first point. We'll go through each one individually. Point number 1, the adoption of art styles. Let's see. ComicsGaters, apparently, which is the thing.
They're alligators that are in comics.
Right. Alligators that love. There's Killer Croc specifically.
Yes.
ComicsGaters believe.
How is he not the spokesperson right now? He is the ComicsGator.
Yeah, eating what they would say is an SJW. ComicsGaters believe the following are problems that pervade the comic book industry. Number 1, the adoption of art styles influenced exclusively by progressive politics and by the awkward, stilted injection of said political messages into stories, regardless of whether context demands it or not. That's tenet number 1, or that's a problem number 1, apparently.
Okay.
Let me get your thoughts on that.
So, I think that they could have a small point here, in that very last part you said, that injecting story points where they were not relevant or kind of necessary to the story.
Sure.
And I think that can be bad writing. And I also think that is something that comic books can fall prey to sometimes, is trying to inject unnecessary things of any nature. Like there's a lot of times in comics where you just be reading along and you'd be like, well, that wasn't necessary.
That was a weird thing.
Weird.
It could be a character they're trying to make more popular, so they get them in there or somehow.
They're trying to get you to buy another monthly so they have a guest appearance or whatever. So that happens in comics a lot, and if you are somebody who reads comics a lot, it's pretty apparent when that happens.
Yes.
When there are sort of story...
To me, here's maybe a more still comics based, but in Ant-Man, when they make him go to Avengers base and he fights Falcon.
Yes,
it's like, that felt really that didn't need to happen. This felt weird.
Or in Thor, when he goes to Doctor Strange to find where his dad is.
Yeah.
When again, totally unnecessary.
Not necessary. I understand the point with both, but not necessary, and felt kind of weird.
Yeah. Exactly that. And so, that's exactly what we're talking about in the world of comics here, though. And that's a thing that happens. And yes, that can be a little awkward sometimes.
Yeah, I also think I can understand the feeling that comic book politics are leaning pretty heavily progressive.
Right.
I would say that's pretty factually accurate.
Yeah, no, 100%.
I think there's
we just talked about how X-Men, the X series, is basically secular humanism, which would be considered a more liberal thing. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, 100%. And also, but I mean, it's not even like I think that. There's been some pretty clear, like, Marvel's specifically trying to do this, like specifically creating characters that are more diverse, and things that a progressive, politically progressive person would usually stereotypically want to see in life.
Right.
So like I don't think that's I don't think they're necessarily wrong. I don't think they're off base here. My issue with this, and this is actually going to come up a lot, is that it's incredibly subjective.
Yes.
That, like, every time you see the words awkward, stilted injection of said political message, whether or not the context demands it, you can never say for sure that that's true or not. Awkward and stilted just might be how you hear it. Awkward and stilted might be, I don't want that, so it sounds awkward.
That's exactly my struggle with this is when they say the injection of these things that's awkward and stilted, what they're, I don't want to put words in people's mouths here, but what it seems like they're really saying,
right,
what their heart is really saying is, hey, Batman's new sidekick Signal is black. That was forced. He didn't need to be that way. Clearly that was forced, or whatever, or so-and-so came out as gay. That was unnecessary. That's awkward and stilted, when at the end of the day, that actually is a very real possible thing. There's nothing saying that couldn't happen.
Yeah.
This isn't...
Black people exist.
Yes, gay people exist.
Right.
There are closeted people out there that have to come out at some point.
Right.
After years sometimes. It's not... they consider awkward because it's not them. It's not
them,
something,
or it's not something that they've seen a lot.
Right, they're not comfortable with.
Yes.
And I think that, and we'll get to the other ones in a second here, but I think really the ComicsGate struggle, and it's almost understandable. It's not good, but you can almost understand, is that for a very, very long time, comics have predominantly created characters in which white, straight, male, cisgendered males can identify with these people.
Right.
They see themselves in these people.
Historically, that's been the case, even if it's a power fantasy element.
Right.
I can't see myself in Superman, other than the fact that we're both white. But we are nothing alike other than that, politically, physically, but we have white skin. So...
But now they are seeing that less. Now, some of those characters that they have identified with are no longer there, and so they feel awkward in what they considered their space before.
Right.
And again, that's an understandable feeling. It's a feeling that I get as a person of color sometimes.
Everybody.
Yeah. When I go into a meeting or into some sort of official thing and I notice that it's all white people, I feel weird sometimes, just automatically. And it's just a natural thing that happens, and it's things that people happen. So it's these people who have had a space that was geared toward them very specifically for a very long time, now continuing the space or returning to the space, and they are no longer comfortable in it. And that's what this seems to be right here, is they're straight up saying that thing that happened was weird. Sometimes it's not actually not weird, it's just not something they're comfortable with.
You're just not used to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think there's I don't know what the term, the concept is, you've been so used to being superior that when somebody else asks for equality, it feels like persecution.
Yeah.
Like you're wanting more. Why aren't you okay with just how it is?
Right.
Because it's fine. I'm fine. What's problem? You're causing the problem. Okay. Point number 2. This is another problem apparently in the comic book industry, according to ComicsGate. The hiring of people based purely on their surface traits and, quote, oppressed demographic, quote, status, unquote, status, parentheses, women, minorities, LGBT, rather than being hired based on merit, affinity, or enthusiasm for craft. This one, I can't. I don't even know what it's so subjective. I can't even give it like a, oh, I see where they're coming from. Like,
this is a very common opinion in the entire business world, hiring world right now.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's the thought that affirmative action, the purposeful hiring of minorities or minority gender or whatever else,
Yeah.
is the purposeful hiring of that is
in and of itself racist. Or,
Exactly.
Or
persecution toward everyone
the
else.
one that isn't being hired.
Correct. And I will admittedly say that, 10 years ago-ish, I agreed with that. That made sense to me in my brain. I was like, wait a second. If you have person A and person B, and on a scale of 10, person A is a 10 and person B is a 9, but person B is a minority, so you hire them, that's racist, right? Like, that's objectively...
Okay. Yeah, okay, I can get you on. I can get there with you.
Right.
In concept, in theory.
In very simple concept.
Yes.
To your point, though, you can't rate people on a scale of 10 like
Again,
that. That's real tough to do.
It's so subjective.
Right.
This
But
person doesn't have the enthusiasm that I think they do or should. How do you know?
Right. So, to me, what changed my opinion on this and why I think that this is kind of a hollow argument is a long time ago, somebody sort of pointed out to me the way things work. It's the systematic part of it. The system already puts these people at a disadvantage.
Yes.
And unless we create some sort of advantage, it will never be equal again.
Right.
And once we create an advantage, then it will slowly even itself out. It will slowly become that. So it's like if there is 2 gardens and 1 river, and the mass flow of the river runs toward one garden and a trickle runs to the other, one garden is dying, the other is not.
Right.
Digging a trench, purposefully creating more flow to the other garden, won't kill that first garden. That garden's going to be real healthy. But for the other garden for them to be equal, there needs to be an advantage created for that other garden.
It's called equity.
Right. There needs to be equity created for that other garden.
Right.
And so, yes, there is a little bit of an advantage given, but it must be given if we ever want true equality.
Yeah. The advantage to make... Okay. You're right. There has to be an advantage.
Yes.
You have to deal with that because right now there is a disadvantage. One side is already getting more white men in the comics industry. They are already the default. Therefore, if we want there to be an actual equality of all people as the American, legal system / whatever, dream, whatever you want to call it, says there should be, then there has to be an advantage given to the to the people
minority.
Who are in the minority.
Yeah.
100%.
Because the reality is, psychologically, we are comfortable with ourselves, meaning we're the person we see in the mirror every single day. When we look down at ourselves, we're what we see. And so the face, the skin color, everything that we see the most consistently is ourselves. And therefore, when there is somebody who doesn't, at least like who reflects that very far, we are less comfortable with them. This is a psychological fact for the majority of human beings. It's just the way it works. We see ourselves the most, and therefore we want to see the reflection of ourselves.
Or that's kind of our default.
Right. Yeah,
Maybe if it's not even a conscious wanting to, it's at least
it's
the default.
subconscious. Yeah, it's subconscious. Yeah.
There you go.
So, because only like 60 or 70 years ago, within the lifetime of human beings today, because it was illegal for these minorities to hold these positions, we're at a point today where they are dominated by white males. And because subconsciously these white males are going to be more comfortable with people that reflect them,
right?
It is, unless there is an advantage given, the equity will never ever come.
This is a microcosm of the entirety of the United States culture as a whole right now.
The systematic everything.
These ideas might be reminding you of everything going on right now.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on. We got a few more to get to.
Yep.
Number 3. The change or outright replacement of beloved classic characters to pander to progressive and or leftist politics instead of creating new characters to this end. For this end. That's apparently another problem with the comics industry right now.
This is probably one that I would identify with the most.
Okay.
And because we already talked about this a little bit before, where I would say, like, there is a part of people that we have seen that character, that iconic character. They have an iconic look. That's who that person is. That doesn't look the same anymore, and therefore that doesn't seem like the character to me anymore. This is as simple as when Superman had a mullet for a while.
Yep.
It was weird. And
very 90s.
Yeah, and like it was just a different look, and then what happened after 6 or 7 years? They cut his hair again.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't anything about race or gender, but it was kind of a change in character aesthetics.
At least, very least appearance.
Yeah,
what did he
aesthetics,
look like?
appearance. And so it was one of those things where when you begin to change iconic characters to reflect something different, that's one that I can understand. It doesn't frustrate me, but I can understand where people would be frustrated.
Sure.
But at the same time, there was a flip side to that in which, like Wonder Woman is this Greek, demigoddess, and therefore over time she's become more and more Greek looking. They've given her more copper colored skin.
Yeah.
They've given her brown eyes, things like that, and they've made her reflect that more, and that makes sense within the character.
Sure.
They are letting her character become what she should be iconically and whatnot. So there are two sides to that. If you're going to lean into a character and say this is what the character should be, then lean into it properly.
I do understand. Like, I love this character, and for a reason. This is different. I don't like it as much anymore. I think that's kind of a fear of the unknown, and it's kind of like you just don't like different. But at the same time, so I think one of the biggest examples of this would be Thor, when Jane Foster became.
I was about to say Jane Goodall. That would be
Goodall.
Very different.
Oh, that would be amazing. Jane Foster became the mighty Thor when Thor, as we know him, lost the mantle of Thor.
Right.
Was no longer worthy to hold the hammer, to hold Mjolnir, and Jane Foster was, and she became Thor. Literally in name, she was called Thor.
Right.
And people were upset, still are to this day, because Natalie Portman will be portraying that role.
Right.
And people are upset about it. And to me, here's the problem. The character of Thor never went away. It's not changed. That character, even the male version of Thor, still existed, had a story, never left the comic book realm.
Right.
He and Jane Foster Thor fought, like, it was always there. So it's to me, it's like saying that sequel to a movie ruined the first one. It did not.
Right.
It did not. The bad prequels and the not as great sequels don't ruin the greatest Star Wars movie, which is Empire Strikes Back. It's still an incredible movie. So, like, it's just a weird argument. I don't really get it. I don't really understand how a difference to a character, even if it's the same person, like, say, if Tony Stark changes in some way, okay, it doesn't change the demon in a bottle storyline that was this iconic character making thing. At the same time, I still think this is an element of very subjective, and it only really happens when it's a character change that I don't like. When it's, Miss Marvel is, they're trying to replace Captain Marvel, or there's a new Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, and she's Muslim. Like, let me give you an example of this. What I'm trying to say is, Tony Stark in the original Iron Man storyline, he was taken captive in the Vietnam War. They changed him for the Marvel, the movies. Now he's taken captive in the Middle East.
Right.
That's a change to the character. That's a big change to the character. Nobody cared.
Right.
Nobody cared because it's still this white guy who I like. And so if you're going to want to maintain the same character, you can't be as selective like that. You have to say, this is different and I don't like it about every single change.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
It really is. And then at the end of the day, it's when you start picking and choosing what you are and are not comfortable with, you are admitting that it is subjective. And that just because you have that opinion doesn't mean that everybody else should have it as well.
Character or comics are not for you specifically.
Right. And
comics are for everyone.
That's going to be my end of the line, the thing on all of this is just that, hey, if you don't like it, you can stop reading.
Yeah, we'll get to kind of the overview of it, but let's go to number 4 here. The elitist purge of anything that is, quote, not progressive enough. This one, I don't know of any specific examples
Yeah, I can't.
of what this would be, but I do think that like the idea of cancel culture, I think, is what this is getting to.
Yeah.
The idea of this isn't enough, so you're done.
Oh, okay.
Like you're not tweeting enough about this subject, so we shouldn't listen to you or whatever happens in real life.
Right.
Who hasn't tweeted about this? Why are you a monster? Kind of thing. This one I can understand. Like, yeah, that's a problem. If you have this like idea of you have to be, I think it takes away from the concept of like writing. If you have to have if you're required to have a certain agenda, then your writing is going to be affected. I'm okay with agendas in writing. Every single piece of writing and art ever has had a specific agenda.
Yeah, art is political.
Art is political in nature and always has been, including comic books.
Especially comic books.
Hey, remember when Captain America on the very first issue was punching Hitler
Punched
in the face?
Hitler.
Just because you agree with that should be a thing you
Doesn't
did
mean it's
doesn't
not
mean it's
political.
not political. Ugh, get that off my chest. Mother of pearl. Even like 10 years ago, Civil War. Like, people love Civil War. It's a great story.
X-Men was created.
X-Men has always been an
for the civil
allegory
rights
for
movement.
civil rights, like and just like persecution for being different. Like, to me, this we're kind of getting off the topic of the elitist purge of anything that is not progressive enough. But to me, I think of like the video game The Outer Worlds, when people called it a political game because it had women in it. Because you could be a woman and had lots of women side characters and NPCs. When the game is explicitly about the evils of greed and capitalism and how these massive companies own the universe, like, no, that's a political game because of the political message it has. Women are not political.
They're people. They're just
people.
Exist. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like it's just the automatic assumption that when you are doing something that agrees with political quote-unquote doctrine that somebody might have, then you are making a political statement. It's like, I'm going to make a comparison here, saying that when somebody says Black Lives Matter, they're making a political statement. That might be aligned with their political views, but the fact that Black Lives Matter is not a political statement in and of itself.
Right.
So, like, it's just this weird conglomeration of politics and identity culture, and it's difficult. Let's get to the last one.
Well, I will say this as far as
the
the political part of this goes is, and we talked about cancel culture before, and you guys know my opinion on it, and that I disagree with it pretty strongly.
We should cancel it.
Yeah, we should cancel culture. But at the same time, there is a difference between a rumor about somebody, like this whole thing with Tom King and Jay Lee. That was a rumor, and poor Jay Lee and his wife had to suffer for it. And it was entirely unsubstantiated, and it was ridiculous. But on the other side, there are times when people will be quoted with like using the N-word or things like that. And at that point, yes, you should be held accountable for racist actions, or you should be held accountable for socially unacceptable actions. That's just the reality of it. Like, it's not an SJW agenda to say, hey, DC Comics as an organization doesn't support racism, and so we're gonna fire racists.
Yeah, like that's just corporate. Like that's their mission, their values.
Right.
And every single person has those.
Yes. So to me, there is a line there.
There is a line.
And on one side, yes, it is too much. It's the knee-jerk reaction we were talking about. On the other side, like, there was a councilman recently that blamed coronavirus on black people, on quote the N people. Yeah, and
2020 is bad, man.
It's real bad.
Yeah.
And guess what? That person's done. He's done.
Which is perfectly fair.
Yes.
At the very least, that's a lie. Like, it's just factually incorrect. Like, he's just making stuff up. Like, not to say I don't care about the like racism of it, but well, he's just a liar. So why would you want him as a
wrong
politician?
in every way. Yeah.
All right, last one. The rejection. So this is a problem. The rejection of honest criticism swept aside as harassment or discrimination. This one I'm gonna again. It's completely subjective.
Yeah.
You don't get to decide what is honest criticism or not. Just, I believe this, you disagree, well, you're just an SJW. Like, it's, nah, man.
There really is two sides of this coin, though. And you're absolutely right in the fact that it's a subjective thing where, on one side, if somebody says, hey, this is a problem, X thing is a problem, And person number 2 can then respond, you're just an SJW, or you're just an alt-right, psycho, or whatever else. On the other hand, sometimes people say this is a problem, and the other person will say, hey, I hear you, I honestly just don't agree with you. And then person number 1 will say you're just an SJW or you're an alt-right psycho.
Right.
It's really not about the opinions, it's about feeling heard. And I think
heard and allowing criticism.
I think that we could do a lot of good for organizations, large organizations, with giving people, finding a way, and I don't know what that way is, finding a way to make people feel heard. So we don't just say, you're wrong, deuces. We can say, hey, I understand what you're saying. I've taken a really deep look into it, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but I am saying I disagree with you. And because I am the person in charge, and because me and these 5 other people have talked, we respect your opinion, we respect you, but we disagree, so we're not going to follow through with your suggestions. Something to that nature. To make people feel heard, I think would help change a lot. Because a lot of the knee-jerk reaction is just to not hear people and just call people names.
Sure.
And so I understand where this is coming from. It's very subjective, and there are 2 sides to this coin.
See, at the same time, though, the idea of making people feel heard should not be a standard that's always applied. If some person says Kamala Khan's a terrible superhero because she's Muslim and a terrorist because of it, I don't need to make that person feel heard. That's a racist, right? Well, not racist, because Islam is not a race.
Right.
Typically it's associated bigotry, sure. But like, it's not like I need, let's hear what you have to say, or I understand where you're coming from. I don't, you're a liar. Like, that's a factually incorrect statement.
And
so
see, I would
don't
actually
need to have dialogue with that person.
I would actually disagree with you. I would say that you don't in particular. In fact, there are people that should not have that dialogue with people, but people should feel heard. Human beings should feel heard. The worst racist on the planet should be loved in a way that somebody's going to sit down and listen to them, because if nobody sits down to listen to them, then there's nobody going to say, hey man, I heard you, I heard everything you have to say, but that's wrong.
Yeah.
I wanted to respect you enough to hear your words.
I'll give you that one.
But you're wrong.
I'll tell you that in person, absolutely.
Yes.
Online, nah.
No.
I'll click away. I'm done.
Yep.
It's a different arena, and you saying something on Twitter or whatever, nobody needs to sit down and say, well,
online is never the space.
Nah, if you're in person, if a friend of mine or somebody I know was just like, yeah, I really think that this character, whatever, be like, well, I don't think that actually really follows through in reality. I think there's, probably like different, I'd have that conversation. I'd love to have that conversation. ComicsGate is a purely online thing, though.
Yeah,
and so
that's fair.
It does. I don't think there's any real
Well, I mean, it's also in the worlds of the business side, the hiring of DC Comics and Marvel Comics, and the people employed in these places.
Sure, things are affected by it,
right?
But as far as like the dialogue goes, and if somebody is genuinely wanting to like have a conversation about that, sure. Unfortunately, they're not really. It's like not often framed in a let's have a constructive dialogue. It's SJWs are ruining everything.
So, and here's my point. If Marvel has X thing going on, boom.
Yeah, they've got a lot of X things going on right now.
And somebody comes in and says, hey, I honestly feel like we're making a way too much of a push for liberal media, and I feel like that's affecting our quality of comics. Like, I, as an artist, I don't like the quality of comics we're putting out because we have this huge agenda. I feel like the agenda is being put ahead of the art, and I'm not comfortable with that. And then I feel like that should be heard, and somebody else should get together and they should talk, or there should be some sort of conversation, and then to go back to that person and maybe then say, hey man, we heard you, we totally understand. That's honestly not the direction of Marvel Comics right now.
Sure.
So we're keeping it as it is.
Right. Your viewpoint is not owed validation.
Right. Yeah. But allowing people to feel heard instead of just brushing people off and saying you're wrong, you're an alt-right weirdo, or you're an SJW.
Sure.
That's not productive. It's really not. In a personal setting, I will say that online, I don't engage at all.
Just don't engage.
Yeah, I just don't engage at all.
It's not worth it.
Yep.
So let's give overall thoughts here of just kind of not necessarily let's take down ComicsGate, but just like kind of thoughts on I think they're taking it down themselves. But
Yes,
thoughts
they
on
are.
just diversity in comics and diversity as a concept, and I don't know, like just comics in general and where they're going in this whole topic.
Well, I'll say as far as the whole topic goes, it seems to be kind of going the way that a lot of like internet organizational thing goes, where they have a focus and a desire, and then they just crap all over that and go all over the place. They say, hey, we're kind of losing the identity of our characters.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go online or they go on a video and say, boobs can't be any bigger than an A cup anymore, and that's stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what you say and what you do is going to reflect on your organization
Right.
way more than those 5 tenets that we just read right
Mm-hmm.
there. Way more. If it were just those 5 tenets, I would really be interested in having more conversations about this with people. I still disagree with a lot of them. I really do.
Sure.
But overall, to answer your question about comics in general, comics are dying. Comics are dying, and they need to change, or they're not going to survive.
In
And
physicality, they're dying.
Yeah, physically. Yeah,
Physical
physical comics are
comics.
dying. Yeah, but unless comics find a way to cast a wider net, they're going to continue to dissolve. And how do you cast a wider net? You find people with disposable income. Disposable income are your 15 to 25 to 30-year-olds. Hey, what's the biggest like issue among 15 to 25 and 30-year-olds, whatever? That's mostly liberal, mostly social
Right.
social action, things like
Yeah.
that. And I think right there, like, that just makes perfect
It makes
sense.
sense. It's a business move.
It
At
is
the end,
it's a
even
great
taking
business
out
move.
it's just like who has disposable income? Usually a younger demographic. Politics, for younger demographics are not always more progressive, but often are.
Right.
Especially in like New York, where Marvel Comics is based, and LA, where DC Comics is based. Like they're going after demographics to make money because it's a company that makes comics to make money. Like, they're not saying that they're not artists at the same time, but without the money, then the art can't happen
Right.
in the way that it does right now. Maybe things should change, but who knows? Like, I think my major gripe with something like this is that everything that you're saying can be just said back to you.
Mm-hmm.
SJWs are just trying to push their liberal agenda and just trying to, take over the brains of the young people reading the comics. ComicsGate is just trying to push their conservative agenda and trying to it's so subjective that it ends up being meaningless.
Yes.
And really what's being revealed is your insecurity, again, as well as everybody has, it's either comics are perfect right now and shouldn't change, or comics were perfect when I was 12 or 13 and shouldn't change. And it's just like, well, if you're just afraid of change then.
Right.
You just like things static. When in reality, I think what would get more boring is if comics never changed, then we would still be seeing the 1940s in all of our comics, and it would be irrelevant and die immediately.
Yeah.
Like, if things don't change, then they don't survive. It's what I always remember. This is what Neil Gaiman said was basically the concept of Sandman before he wrote it. The Lord of the Dreaming has a choice: change or die, or change, something like that.
Yeah.
It's just like, if you don't change, if comics don't reflect the times, then they're going to die, because it's art. You're allowed to have an agenda, and you should be reflecting the times you're in, because if you're not, you're a dead medium.
And honestly, man, I would say ComicsGate people, you really, really care about this, form your own indie studio and
That's
write
the
your
thing.
own
There
comics,
are
man.
lots of ComicsGate, quote unquote, comics on like Indiegogo right now and Kickstarter. They're pretty easy to find for people who are saying, this is what I want to see in comics. I'm making my own.
There you
I
go.
love it.
Yeah.
I might not like your comic. I'm probably not going to read it.
Right.
But hey, that's great. I
Yeah.
love, do your own thing. If you want to see this, make it.
Absolutely, yes.
Awesome. That's great.
I'm not going to read it. I'm not going to support it, but I'm glad you're doing it.
I'm glad you're doing it, because
Yeah.
it shows you really care.
Yep. Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much for listening. Hey, let us know what you think about ComicsGate. Let us know what you think about those 5 tenets. Let us know what you think about Fox and I's rebuttals to each of these tenets. Thank you to Granger.
Let us know what you think about David Tennant.
Let us know what you think about David Tennant.
Let us know what you think about the upcoming Christopher Nolan movie, Tenet.
Yeah. Let us know what you think about 10 Ants. Thanks to Granger for the use of our theme song All my friends have Wi-Fi, and some of my neighbors do too. Off of the album Dear Sam. As always, I'm gonna remind you guys, it is a sweet album altogether. You could go listen to that one song, which is very good, but go pick up the whole album. Seriously.
Yeah. On YouTube right now, on our YouTube channel, we've got a few different games going on. We've still got, Last of Us Part 2 actually. No, it's still going.
No, it's still going.
Well, yeah. I was wondering if we would have a gap, but we won't.
No.
As far as I know.
Because we're recording today.
We're recording today. Anyway, Last of Us Part 2 is going up. That game is wrecking us in some ways.
A lot
of ways. It is a dark game. It is a great game. I'm very excited to finish it. I'm not sure how long this game is. Anyway, my walkthrough of Spyro the Dragon, the remaster, is going up. It's going the next couple weeks. It'll be going on. And then your playthrough of Code
There's a little
Vein.
gap in Code Vein right now, but it'll start going up again soon.
Code Vein is a thing going on right now, and my playthrough of Ghost of Tsushima is gonna start. I think I said this last week, but it'll start soon.
I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
I am, because I want to watch it. Also, I'm putting up a full playthrough of Evans Remains, a just choice indie game, on our Patreon. So I'll just tag one more time there. Head over to patreon.com/dezandfox and check that out. Well, guys, thank you one more time. You're all pretty awesome. Always remember that save games, they save lives.
See you next week.
My voice sings all night.